So we'll start with tuberculosis. So what is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a chronic communicable disease. Okay, it is a chronic communicable disease which can cause pulmonary and systemic diseases. So it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and Mycobacterium tuberculosis hominis is the most common organism. It is slender rod like bacilli, which is 0.5 micrometer, and it is neutral on Gram stain. Okay, it is demonstrated by Zeal-Nensel staining method. Other types of Mycobacterium tuberculosis which can cause infection are Mycobacterium tuberculous bovis and Mycobacterium tuberculous avium and Mycobacterium tuberculous intracellular. Now, Mycobacterium bovis mainly occurs in cows and spreads to the human through milk, and it causes intestinal tuberculosis or tonsillar tuberculosis. Okay. Now, infection occurs through intake of unpasteurized milk, and because now we use more of pasteurized milk, this is relatively uncommon. Mycobacterium tuberculous avium and Mycobacterium tuberculous intracellular are non-pathogenic in normal human beings. Okay, but they can cause infections, disseminated infections in patients with AIDS. Now, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is basically slender, rod like bacillus, just 2 to 10 micrometers in size. It is neutral on Gram stain. It has a lipid coat, and it can be demonstrated by Zeal-Nensel staining method. Now, incidence of tuberculosis in India is 400 per 1 lakh population. 1.5 million infectious cases are there. It is incidence of tuberculosis is low in industrialized country, and patients with HIV are more prone to tuberculosis, and they can also have multiple drug resistant tuberculosis. Now, what are the sites of involvement of tuberculosis? It can cause pulmonary tuberculosis in 85% of all cases. It can also occur in extrapulmonary sites like the lymph nodes, the genitourinary tract, bones and joints, meninges, intestine, and the skin. So, what is the pathogenesis? Now, how is TB transmitted, or what is the mode of infection? Now, it is basically a through droplet infection. So, it is from person to person through air by a person with a disease of the lung. Less frequently, it is transmitted by ingestion of M. bovis, which is found in unpasteurized milk. It can also occur through inoculation in skin tuberculosis, and rarely it can occur through transplacental route. The outcome of infection in a previously immunocompetent person depends on development of T cell mediated immunity. Infection by M. tuberculosis proceeds from an initial infection of macrophages to subsequent T helper 1 response that both contains the bacteria and it causes tissue damage. So, how does this bacilli cause infection, or what is the pathogenesis? So, basically, it can escape from the macrophage killing. Now, tuberculous bacilli has the capability to escape from the macrophage killing because of the presence of the cell wall components. Now, the cell wall components has Cod factor, which causes growth of the tubercle bacilli. It has lipoarabinomannan, which is LAM. Now, LAM inhibits the interferon gamma activated by macrophages. It induces the macrophages to produce interleukin 10, which suppresses the T cell proliferation. Now, then the presence of activation of complement. Activation of complement causes opsonization of the bacilli. And M. tuberculosis heat shock protein. This induces an autoimmune response. So, because of the presence of cord factor, LAM, activation of complement, and presence of heat shock proteins, this tubercle bacilli can escape the killing through macrophages. Now, the host response depends on whether the exposure is first exposure, which is a primary infection, or the host has already been sensitized by a previous exposure, which is known as a secondary infection or secondary tuberculosis. So once there's an inhalation of tuberculous bacilli, the tubercular bacilli reaches to the periphery of the lung or the subpleural region. So the tubercle bacilli reaches to the periphery of the lung or into the subpleural region. Now, in the subpleural region, the bacilli is first phagocytosed by the alveolar macrophages and it is transported to the regional draining lymph nodes. So, it is ingested by the alveolar macrophages and then it is transported to the regional draining lymph nodes. The macrophages which are not sensitized are unable to kill the bacilli, and so the tubercular bacilli multiply and grow, sometimes spreading to other areas of the lung. Within 2 to 3 weeks, the T cell mediated or type 4 hypersensitivity immunity develops. Now, the activated T cell kills the bacteria in 3 ways. The activated T helper cells, that are CD4 positive cells, activate the macrophages through the production of interferon gamma. The activated macrophages produces nitric oxide, NO2 and HNO3, which kill the ingested bacilli. In the process, the macrophage is modified into epithelioid cell. So the macrophages get modified into epithelioid cell. Now the activated suppressor T cells, that is CD8 cells, lyse the bacilli ingested macrophages and kill the bacilli. So they lyse and they kill the bacilli. Now the T cell lyse the bacilli ingested macrophages but fail to kill the bacilli. This mycobacteria gets killed in the acid media lacking oxygen present outside the macrophages. Okay, so the lysis of the macrophages results in formation of caseous necrosis and epithelioid cell granulomas. So, now the necrotic environment in the lung has low oxygen levels and low pH. So this inhibits the growth of the bacilli and the lesion slowly heals by fibrosis and calcification. Now sometimes this bacilli may remain dormant for many years inside the macrophages. Now on X-ray, this foci appears as a calcific focus which is known as a Ranke's complex. Now, primary tuberculous granuloma is formed in the subpleural region. Okay, it is in the upper part of the lower lobe or the lower part of the upper lobe. Okay, and it is known as a Ghon's complex. Now, so this Ghon's complex, has a necrotic environment, has low oxygen tension, and it has low pH, which inhibits the growth of the bacilli. Okay, and this lesion may heal by fibrosis and calcification, or this bacilli may remain dormant for many years. Now on X-ray, the foci appears as calcific focus and it is known as a Ranke complex. Okay? This lesion may later flare up if the immunity of the person is weak. Now, when the immunity of a person becomes weak, this lesion can flare up, okay? And the lesion can destroy the bronchial wall and the necrotic material can get cupped out, leading to formation of a cavity. Now, tubercle bacilli can multiply inside this cavity and spread. So the term Gons focus is used when the primary is in the lung. Okay, when the primary is in the other organ, then it is known as a primary focus. And Gons complex is Gons focus along with involvement of draining lymphatics and the lymph node is known as a Gons complex. And primary complex is the primary focus with the draining lymphatics and the lymph nodes is known as a primary complex. So what are the sites, various sites of primary complex? The sites can be intestine, pharynx, skin, eye. Okay. So intestine, it is a primary focus plus the draining lymphatics and the mesenteric lymph nodes. Pharynx has the primary focus in the pharyngeal wall with the draining lymphatics and the lymph nodes. Skin may be the primary focus with the draining lymphatics and the regional lymph nodes. It is not mesenteric lymph nodes, it is regional lymph nodes. Eye will have primary focus in the conjunctiva, the draining lymphatics, and the pre-auricular lymph node. This is by mistake, it is not mesenteric lymph node, it is pre-auricular lymph nodes. Now, secondary tuberculosis is also known as post-primary tuberculosis or reactivation tuberculosis. Now, secondary tuberculosis results from a reactivation of an old subclinical or a dormant infection. The secondary tuberculosis occurs in high oxygen tension areas where the growth of mycobacteria is favorable. So these areas basically are the apical and the posterior segment of the upper lobe of the lung. Now the secondary tuberculosis causes more damage as compared to the primary tuberculosis. Now tubercular pneumonia. Immunodeficient, it is more susceptible in immunodeficient state. They spread rapidly and they involve large areas of the lung parenchyma and lead to formation of a cavitary fibrocaseous tuberculosis. Now, the lesions can erode through a bronchiole. The caseous material which is present inside the bronchiole can drain out or can be cuffed out, leading to formation of a cavity. Now, this cavity is generally surrounded by a fibrous wall. Now, this can involve one lobe of the lung, both the lobes of the lung, can involve the other lung, or it can involve the pleura as well. Then tubercular pleuritis. Tubercular pleuritis, there is serous pleural effusion. There will be presence of frank pus within the pleura leading to empyema. It can cause fibrosis between the pleural surfaces leading to obliterative fibrous pleuritis. Then there can be tubercular lymphadenitis. This is a common presentation of extrapulmonary tuberculosis and source of infection is most commonly the lungs. Then there can be tuberculosis of the airways like bronchial TB, laryngeal TB, pharyngeal TB or epiglottic TB. There can be tubercular pericarditis. Tubercular pericarditis generally occurs in elderly and in HIV patients. It can be the primary focus or the tuberculous lymph node can be a primary focus. Because of fibrosis, it can lead to chronic constrictive pericarditis and there can be massive pleural effusions which can lead to tamponade. Tuberculosis in the central nervous system can occur in young children, can occur in HIV patients. Generally, the infection spreads through the hematogenous route. Okay. Leading to inflammation in the meninges, tubercular meningitis, brain parenchyma, tubercular encephalitis. In the ventricles, it can cause tubercular ventriculitis and can block the foramen of Luschka and Magendie, leading to hydrocephalus. Can cause arterial occlusions in the arachnoid and fibrosis. It can cause infarctions of the brain and it can cause cranial nerve paresis. Now, tuberculoma is a space occupying lesions in the brain parenchyma and it can result in seizures. Generally, these are well circumscribed intraparenchymal masses. Now, the CSF can show many changes depending upon the whether it is tubercular meningitis, whether it is bacterial meningitis, or whether it is viral meningitis. So, normal CSF, the appearance is colorless. Proteins is 0.15 to 0.40. Glucose is 2.7 to 4.0 normally, and cells are 0 to 4 lymphocytes. Now, in tubercular meningitis, the CSF is straw colored, and if the CSF is left to stand for some time, cobweb is formed. Proteins are increased, glucose is low or it is absent, and if we do a microscopy of the CSF, then we see that there are large number of neutrophils and few lymphocytes can be seen. Okay, and if we do an AFB stain, then we can Z-Lensel stain, then we can see the acid-fast bacilli. Bacterial meningitis, it is turbid, proteins are increased, glucose is decreased or absent, and the polymorphs are increased. Okay. In viral meningitis, the color is clear. Okay. Proteins may be normal, glucose may be normal, and the cells, if we do a cell count, then the lymphocytes are increased. Now, intestinal tuberculosis can occur because of ingestion of infected cow's milk by Mycobacterium tuberculosis bovis. Okay, it is because of the ingestion of unpasteurized milk, and an infection by Mycobacterium tuberculosis bovis has decreased now because milk is being pasteurized. Okay, it can also occur because of swallowing of sputum from the pulmonary focus, or it can be intestinal tuberculosis can also occur because of spread of the tuberculous bacilli through the hematogenous route. Okay, so in the intestine, they can form tubercular ulcers. Okay, now the tubercular ulcers has to be differentiated from a typhoid ulcer in the intestine. Now, in the intestine, tuberculosis generally occur in the ileocecal junction. Typhoid ulcers, they occur in the small intestine. The arrangement of the ulcers in tuberculosis is circumferentially as the TB spreads through the lymphatics, which are arranged circumferentially. Typhoid ulcers are longitudinal as they affect the Peyer's patches. Perforation rarely occurs in tuberculosis, whereas in typhoid ulcer, perforation is more common. Complications are mostly because of fibrosis and stricture formation, which leads to obstruction and adhesions. Okay? Because of perforation, there can be peritonitis in a typhoid ulcer. Microscopically, the tubercular ulcer shows presence of granuloma formation. Whereas the typhoid ulcer shows presence of erythrophagocytosis, which means that the macrophages have ingested the RBCs. Okay. Then on DLC, differential leukocyte, that is blood picture, there will be lymphocytosis, whereas in the typhoid ulcer, there will be neutropenia. Then miliary tuberculosis. Now, miliary tuberculosis are multiple small yellowish lesions, okay, which are 1 to 2 millimeter in diameter, and they resemble the seeds of a millet. Hence the term is miliary or millet-like. Now, miliary tuberculosis occurs due to hematogenous spread of the bacilli from a primary infection or from reactivation of an old disseminated cause. Depending on the pathway of the dissemination, it may be confined to the lungs or it may involve multiple lungs. Okay, so it can spread to multiple organs like bone marrow, liver, spleen, kidney, adrenal, and testis. So, what is the pathogenesis of miliary tuberculosis? Now, the tubercular bacilli enters the lymphatics and then into the major lymphatic duct. And from the major lymphatic duct, it goes into the right side of the heart, then into the pulmonary vessels, and causes miliary tuberculosis of the lung. Sometimes these bacilli escape the filtration of the lungs, and the bacilli can spread into multiple organs. Now, what is non-reactive tuberculosis? It occurs when there is poor immunity, there is extensive granuloma formation, extensive necrosis, but there is no granuloma formation. AFB is strongly positive and it has a poor prognosis. So what are the various complications of tuberculosis? Now the primary focus can become a dormant lesion leading to a progression of secondary tuberculosis, or the primary focus can progress from a primary tuberculosis to further into secondary tuberculosis. So there can be a tubercular pneumonia. Now, tubercular pneumonia can cause cavitary fibrocaseous tuberculosis if it erodes into the bronchiole and the material gets cupped out. So there is a formation of a cavity. Then the tubercle bacilli can involve the pleura, leading to tubercular pleuritis. There will be tubercular pleural effusions. Okay. Then there can be pus formation leading to tuberculous empyema and obliterative pleuritis. Now, there can be tuberculous lymphadenitis. There can be tuberculous pericarditis leading to tuberculous pericardial effusion. There can be tubercular meningitis involving the brain parenchyma leading to tubercular encephalitis. Then tubercular ventriculitis, and it can cause obstruction leading to hydrocephalus. Then it can spread to the kidney leading to tuberculous nephritis. Involve the bone, tuberculous osteomyelitis. Okay. Miliary tuberculosis, if there are multiple small yellowish lesions, 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, then the infection can spread to the intestine, leading to intestinal tuberculosis, which can lead to ulceration and stricture formation, leading to obstruction, or it can lead to formation of a tuberculoma, which are space-occupying lesions, well-defined space-occupying lesions. So, diagnosis of pulmonary tuberculosis is based on clinical, radiographic, and laboratory findings. Now, clinical features: generally the patient presents with low-grade remittent fever, malaise, anorexia, weight loss, night sweats, and cough with sputum. There can be pleuritic pain because of extension of the infection into the pleural surfaces. The extrapulmonary manifestation of tuberculosis depends on which organ is involved. Chest X-ray will show patchy or nodular infiltrates in the apical areas of the upper lobes or in the superior segment of the lower lobes. There can be cavitation which may show air-filled levels. CT scan is required to see the spread of tuberculosis throughout the body, that is miliary tuberculosis, and to detect lung cavities caused by tuberculosis. MRI can be done to look for tuberculosis in the brain and the spine. The chest radiograph shows nodular infiltrates in the apical areas of the upper lobe or the superior segment of the lower lobes. So how can we proceed with the patient? There can be sputum examination. Okay, smears prepared with Ziehl-Neelsen stain. Culture can be done in LJ media or in rapid methods where liquid medium is used. Within 2 to 3 weeks, we can get the result. There we can do PCR amplification of M. tuberculosis, which allows for a more rapid diagnosis. Okay, is as sensitive as culture in acid-fast positive samples, but is slightly less sensitive in smear negative tuberculosis. Okay, and it is less sensitive in children. And fluorescent methods can be used and immunohistochemical methods can be used. However, culture remains the gold standard because it also allows testing of drug susceptibility. So these are the acid-fast bacilli on Ziehl-Neelsen stain. A Montus or tuberculin test can be done. Okay, leads to development of delayed hypersensitivity reaction. Okay, which is known as a Montus skin test. 0.1 ml of tuberculin protein is injected intracutaneously, and the area is marked, and there will be a visible palpable induration that peaks in 48 to 72 hours. Positive tuberculin test signifies T cell mediated immunity to mycobacterial antigen, but it does not differentiate between old infection and active disease. There can be false negative reactions, may occur in certain viral infections, sarcoidosis, malnutrition, Hodgkin's lymphomas, immunosuppression. Okay? And false positive reaction may result from infection by atypical mycobacteria or prior vaccination with BCG. This is showing a Montus skin test. So what is the fate of a primary tuberculosis? 95% of the cases, the primary tubercular focus, which is in the can undergo fibrosis and calcification. Okay, it can progress to primary tuberculosis, progressive primary tuberculosis, or primary miliary tuberculosis. It can also undergo secondary tuberculosis when infection of an individual who has previously been infected. When infection occurs in an individual who has previously been infected, it is called as a secondary tuberculosis. It can also occur from reactivation or reinfection of an old focus. So grossly, this shows millet-sized foci in miliary tuberculosis. These are millet-like foci in miliary tuberculosis. Since they are millet-like, so therefore it is known as a miliary tuberculosis, and they resemble the millet seeds. This is a fibrocaseous cavitatory tuberculosis. You can see that a cavity has been formed. So microscopically, what do we see? We see that there is a caseous necrosis, which is surrounded by epithelioid cell granulomas, and these are the Langerhans giant cells, and then there will be a cuffing of lymphocytes. Okay. So then we come on to chronic diffuse interstitial diseases or restrictive diseases. This is a heterogeneous group of diseases which diffusely involve the lung parenchyma, particularly the interstitium, leading to inflammation and fibrosis. It can be acute or chronic clinical presentation, and they present as dyspnea, increased rate of respiration, and end respiratory crackles. Okay. Lung function shows a restrictive pattern, that is decreased lung volume, decreased lung compliance, and decreased gas transfer. Chest X-ray will show a ground glass shadow. There will be presence of irregular lines and small nodules. Histological picture is mostly overlapping with interstitial inflammation and or fibrosis, which is an end-stage lung disease. There can also be honeycombing of the lung. As the disease progresses, there will be pulmonary hypertension, right-sided heart failure, and cor pulmonalis. So, what are the various types of interstitial lung diseases? Interstitial lung diseases can cause pulmonary fibrosis, like in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, non-specific interstitial pneumonias, cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, pneumoconiosis, and radiation-induced pneumonias. They can have granulomatous lesions, like in sarcoidosis, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, pulmonary eosinophilia. They can be smoking related, like desquamative interstitial pneumonitis, respiratory bronchiolitis associated with interstitial lung disease. They can be PAP or pulmonary alveolar proteinosis. Now, pulmonary fibrosis is also known as diffuse interstitial disease of the lung. The most it is basically due to complication of many diseases. Now, it can be because of complication of occupational or environmental diseases. Now, occupational like mineral or inorganic dust, coal dust, silica dust, asbestos dust. It can be because of biological or organic dust like thermophilic actinomyces, which is also known as a farmer's lung. Because of inhalants like oxygen, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. Can be because of infection like bacteria, viral, fungal, protozoal. It can be because of cytotoxic agents like busulfan, cyclophosphamide, azathioprine. Can be because of non-cytotoxic agents like nitrofurantoin and gold and ionizing radiations. It can also be because of sarcoidosis and rheumatoid arthritis. And SLE, it can also be idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Now, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is also known as cryptogenic fibrosing alveolitis. It is basically a chronic interstitial lung disease of unknown etiology. It is characterized by diffuse interstitial inflammation and fibrosis, which eventually leads to respiratory insufficiency. What is the pathogenesis? Development of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis starts basically with an alveolar wall damage. Now, this alveolar wall damage can be because of chronic cigarette smoking, use of antidepressant drugs, inhalation of metal dust, wood dust, solvent, and viruses. However, there is no definite evidence of these agents has been confirmed. These agents possibly induce an immunological mechanism. Because of this injury, there will be infiltration of inflammatory cells. So there is inflammatory cell infiltration. Because of the inflammation, it will induce hyperplasia of the pneumocytes. Now these pneumocytes release TGF-beta 1. Now this TGF-beta 1 causes fibrosis by production of TGF-beta because it is a fibrogenic factor. This TGF-beta 1 also reduces the production of caveolin 1, which is an inhibitor of fibrosis. And it leads to fibrosis of the intraalveolar septa and formation of intraalveolar exudates, which leads to extensive fibrosis. So there will be areas of immature fibroblastic proliferation called as fibroblastic foci. Certain genetic factors can also lead to idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, like germ line mutation in TERT and TERC gene. Okay, These encode components of the telomerase. Now, telomerase maintains the telomeres and prevents cellular senescence. Now, familial idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is associated with telomerase gene defect. Now, mutations in gene encoding components. It can also cause mutation in gene encoding components and surfactants. And the pneumocytes can also become sensitive to environmental insults. Now, they can be an early stage or an advanced stage changes. Now, in the early stage, there is intraalveolar exudate formation. There will be pulmonary edema. There will be inflammation within the interstitium because of lymphocytes and plasma cells. And the pneumocytes will undergo hyperplasia. And they appear as columnar or cuboidal cells. In the advanced stage of the disease, there will be solid with patchy areas of fibrosis. There will be formation of intraalveolar exudates. Now, these exudates will be slowly replaced by the fibrous tissue. The alveolar septars will also become fibrosed and thickened. Then we have an end stage changes. Now, the fibrotic areas get replaced by multiple spaces, which gives it a honeycomb appearance. The spaces are lined by cuboidal or columnar epithelium, and the spaces are walled off by inflammatory fibrotic tissue. There will be patchy areas of collapse. Clinically, the patient will have respiratory difficulty. There will be hypoxemia and cyanosis. It can result in secondary pulmonary hypertension, cor pulmonale, and cardiac failure. So here you can see that the alveolar exudates are replaced by these areas. These are the exudates and these are areas of edema. Okay, and they are slowly replaced by areas of fibrosis. So these spaces, basically these fibrotic areas are then slowly gets replaced by spaces which give them a honeycomb appearance. And there will be hyperplasia of pneumonites, and there will be inflammation in the interstitial space. Cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, it is also known as COP. It is idiopathic. The etiology is not known. It clinically presents as cough and dyspnea. The alveolar spaces are filled with plugs or balls of fibroblast or connective tissue. These are known as Mason's bodies. And the surrounding lung tissue is normal. It responds to steroid well and can recover spontaneously. It also causes bronchiolitis obliterans organizing pneumonias. So there is no interstitial fibrosis, there is no honeycombing. It causes inflammation of the bronchioles and obliteration by fibrosis. Non-specific interstitial pneumonia. It is a diffuse interstitial lung disease whose lung biopsies does not have any diagnostic feature or of any well-characterized interstitial disease. It has a better prognosis. It is idiopathic or it can be associated with connective tissue disease. Then non-specific interstitial pneumonia. There can be presence of cellular infiltrates like plasma cells, lymphocytes, mild to moderate chronic interstitial inflammation, and uniform or patchy distribution. There can be fibrosis, which can be diffuse or patchy interstitial fibrosis of some stage of development. So here is areas of inflammation with these areas of fibrosis. And there is no honeycombing. There is no hyaline membrane or granulomas. Now, sarcoidosis is a multi-system inflammatory disease which does not have a known etiology. It involves multiple organs and the presence of non-caseating naked granulomas. What is the pathogenesis? The etiology of sarcoidosis is not known. However, it has been postulated that This is CD4 T cell mediated lesions, and genetic factors like HLA1, A1, HLA-B8 play an important role in it. So there's intraalveolar or interstitial accumulation of CD4 T cells. Now these CD4 is to CD8 ratio ranges from 5:1 to 15:1. This increased level of T cell derived T helper 1 cytokines like interleukin 2 and interferon IFNY. Interleukin 8 tumor necrosis factors are also increased and contribute to formation of granulomas. There will also be an impaired dendritic cell function. So morphologically, what we see that are well-formed granulomas made of clusters of epithelioid cells. They are round to oval cells with eosinophilic cytoplasm and vesicular nuclei. Mixed with the epithelioids are multinucleated Langerhans giant cells. The granulomas are very similar to that of tubercular granuloma. However, there are certain differentiating features. They are non-caseating granulomas. Sarcoidosis have non-caseating granulomas. They are naked granulomas, that is, they do not have a cuffing of dense lymphocytes. They are sometimes these granulomas in sarcoidosis have dark bluish colored laminated structures, okay, which are composed of calcium and protein. They are known as Schaumann bodies. And some of these giant cells also show presence of stellate shaped cytoplasmic inclusions, which are known as asteroid bodies. These sarcoidosis can affect the lymph nodes, lungs, skin, spleen, liver, and the bone marrow. So this is a giant cells, Langerhans giant cells, okay, and within the giant cells we can see dark bluish colored laminated structure. Okay, this is a Schaumann body. This is again a giant cells which shows stellate shaped cytoplasmic inclusions, which is known as an asteroid bodies. Now, clinically, these persons are often asymptomatic and they are detected on routine chest X-ray as hilar or mediastinal lymphadenitis. Sometimes they can have cough, hemoptysis, or breathlessness if there's involvement of the lung. Then there can be arthralgia, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, iritis, and erythema nodosa. Hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Hypersensitivity pneumonitis is an allergic alveolitis. This inflammation of the alveoli caused by hypersensitivity to inhaled organic antigens, mainly organic dust. It can be because of occupation or it can be because of hobbies. Now, the disease is mediated as type 3 hypersensitivity or type 4 hypersensitivity reaction. Now, pathogenesis, the hypersensitivity to the exposed antigen. The person is affected by hypersensitivity to the exposed antigen. The antibodies are produced in response to the antigen, leading to antigen-antibody complex. This complex formation gives rise to type 3 hypersensitivity. However, in most of these patients, the disease causes non-caseating granulomas, which is T cell mediated and is a feature of type 4 hypersensitivity. Now, there are different organic antigens which can cause hypersensitive pneumonitis. It can be because of thermophilic actinomycetes, which is because when there are stacks of hay, they become moist. During they're kept for harvesting and they become moist and they lead to germination and rapid proliferation of thermophilic actinomycetes. And when the farmer gets exposed to this moldy hay through dust from the hay stacks, leading to formation of farmer's lung. Antigens can be avian proteins, which lead to bird fancier's disease. It occurs because of bird droppings, serum, and from the feathers. Bacteria like Klebsiella, thermophilic bacteria, Now, mist is generated by humidifiers or air conditioners, and these contain bacteria like Klebsiella and thermophilic bacteria. Now, leading to humidifier or air conditioners lung. Now, morphologically, it shows presence of chronic inflammation, the presence of non-caseating granulomas. The alveoli will also show presence of chronic inflammation comprising of lymphocytes, macrophages, and plasma cells. There will be fibrosis of the alveolar septa and interstitial tissue. There will be honeycombing, and later on it will lead to obliteration of the bronchi and inflammation, leading to obliterative bronchiolitis. So this is showing areas of non-caseating granulomas. Now, clinically, they can present as acute pneumonitis or chronic pneumonitis. Now, acute pneumonitis occurs within 4 to 6 hour exposure to the dust. They can have malaise, fever, cough, dyspnea, and rashes. And chronic pneumonitis is insidious onset of cough and dyspnea, leading to tachypnea, respiratory distress, and failure. X-ray will show diffuse and nodular opacity. There will be honeycombing pattern, and lung function test will show a restrictive pattern. Now, pulmonary alveolar proteinosis is a rare condition characterized by accumulation of dense amorphous eosinophilic material within the alveoli. Exact pathogenesis is not known. This accumulation of eosinophilic material is impaired because of impaired clearance by the alveolar macrophages, and it is due to defective transport of surfactant components. Now, there will be impaired surfactant clearance due to GM-CSF antibody. They block the terminal differentiation of the alveolar macrophages, impairing their ability to catabolize the surfactant. There will be defective transport of surfactant and ATP binding cassette protein A3 and surfactant protein B. Other causes which can impair the macrophage maturation or the function can be silicosis because of malignancies, hematopoietic diseases, or immunodeficiency. Morphologically, the alveoli are filled with pink homogeneous material. There will be surfactant protein, cell debris, cholesterol flakes, and these material are PAS positive. Okay, so they show these presence of pink PAS positive material. Clinically, the patient has cough with sputum. There will be dyspnea, chest pain, and respiratory insufficiency. Now, pulmonary eosinophilia is a group of diverse linear pathological conditions which is characterized by pulmonary infiltrate on X-ray and pathologically as prominent eosinophilic infiltrate. This condition is usually, but not always associated with eosinophilia of blood or sputum. Now, it can be classified as simple pulmonary eosinophilia or Loeffler syndrome, tropical eosinophilia due to microfilaria, and secondary or chronic pulmonary eosinophilia, which can be because of asthma, parasitic infections, fungal infections, bacterial infections, drug allergies, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, and allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. Then there can be idiopathic chronic eosinophilic pneumonia. The lung parenchyma is infiltrated by dense collection of eosinophils and lymphocytes. And on X-ray, there are focal areas of consolidation. The cause of it is not known. There can be acute eosinophilic pneumonia, which presents as fever, dyspnea, and respiratory failure. They will show severe eosinophilic inflammation, and they respond well to steroid therapy. Now, simple pulmonary eosinophilia is also known as Loeffler syndrome. There is mild transient self-limiting pulmonary lesion which resolves in less than a month. So clinically, they are asymptomatic or mild and have a short duration of cough. They can have asthmatic episodes. X-ray chest shows shadows of varying size and shape, the irregular densities. Morphologically, there will be thickening of alveolar septa with infiltration of eosinophils, and there will be blood will show peripheral blood eosinophilia. So the number of eosinophils will be raised in the peripheral blood. Tropical eosinophilia is a distinct syndrome that is caused by viral parasite of any species, filarial parasite of any species. It causes paroxysmal cough and wheezing related to nocturnal periodicity of the microfilaria. It can show low-grade fever. On X-ray chest, there's diffuse miliary mottling or opacity and increased bronchovascular markings. Blood will show there will be presence of eosinophilia and there will be elevated titer of antifilarial antibody. Lung shows confluent or lobar consolidation. The alveoli will be infiltrated by eosinophil and there will be presence of eosinophilic pneumonia. Now, desquamative interstitial pneumonia is a large collection of macrophages in the alveolar spaces in smokers. The presence of desquamated pneumocytes, the accumulation of large number of macrophages abundant cytoplasm and dusty brown pigment, which are known as smokers' macrophages. Prime granular iron is seen in the macrophage of the cytoplasm. The macrophage contain lamellar bodies, which are because of necrotic type 2 pneumocytes. Alveolar septa are thickened with presence of mild inflammation composed of lymphocytes, plasma cells, and eosinophils. There will be interstitial fibrosis and emphysema are often present. It occurs in 4th and 5th decade, mainly chronic cigarette smokers, and clinically it presents as dyspnea, dry cough for weeks to months. There will be clubbing of fingers, and there will be mild restrictive abnormality in pulmonary function test. And they respond very well to steroid therapy.